Have you ever watched someone make the same mistake over and over again, wondering why they never seem to learn? Maybe you've seen a friend or a family member stumble through life, always blaming others for their problems, never stopping to look at themselves. Or perhaps, if you're honest, you've caught yourself falling into the same traps, repeating patterns that keep you stuck, feeling unfulfilled, even as the years go by. As we grow older, it's easy to settle into habits that don't serve us. Habits that keep us from living the rich, meaningful life we deserve. I've spent over 30 years studying the human mind, diving deep into the wisdom of Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, and I can tell you this: what we often call foolishness isn't just about a lack of intelligence. It's about a mindset, a set of choices, a way of living that keeps us blind to our own potential. In this video, we're going to explore 6 clear signs of a foolish mindset that you should watch for, inspired by Carl Jung's profound teachings, so you can break free from these patterns and step into a life of clarity, purpose, and wisdom, especially in your later years. Let's start with the first sign: thinking you already know it all. There's nothing more limiting than a mind that's closed to growth, a mind that believes it has all the answers. I've seen this so many times in my years of working with people, folks who've lived long, full lives, but still hold on to the belief that they don't need to learn anything new. They don't ask questions, they don't seek out fresh ideas, and they cling to old ways of thinking, even when those ways are holding them back. Carl Jung once said, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." And isn't that the truth? It's so much easier to judge a new idea, to dismiss it as useless, than to open your mind and consider that you might be wrong. But when you think you know it all, you shut the door on growth, on learning, on the chance to become a wiser, better version of yourself. Let me share a story to bring this to life. A few years ago, I worked with a man named Harold, a 68-year-old retiree from Seattle. Harold had spent his career as a mechanic, and he was proud of everything he'd learned over the years. But when he retired, he started to struggle. His kids would suggest new hobbies like learning to use a computer or trying out a gardening club, but Harold would brush them off. "I've lived long enough to know what I need," he'd say. "I don't have time for that nonsense." He thought he knew it all, that his years of experience meant he didn't need to learn anything new. But deep down, Harold was lonely. He felt disconnected from his family, from the world around him, because he wasn't willing to step out of his comfort zone and try something different. That belief that he already had all the answers was keeping him stuck, keeping him from the joy and connection he so desperately craved. I see this mindset in so many people as we age. We think our years of experience mean we've got it all figured out, but the truth is, the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. There's a fascinating concept in psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it explains this perfectly. People who know very little often overestimate how much they know, while those who are truly wise understand how much they still have to learn. A foolish mindset is trapped in that overconfidence, that illusion of knowledge. It's the person who thinks they understand everything about health because they read one article online, or the person who argues about politics without ever listening to another perspective. They're so sure of themselves that they don't see how much they're missing. And here's why this matters for you, especially as you move into your later years. Growth doesn't stop when you hit 50 or 60 or 70. In fact, this is the time in your life when learning new things can bring you the most joy, the most fulfillment. Maybe it's picking up a new skill, like painting, or learning to cook a new recipe for your grandkids. Maybe it's reading a book about something you've never explored before, or even just listening to a different point of view with an open heart. When you let go of the idea that you know it all, you open the door to a richer, more connected life. So if you catch yourself dismissing new ideas or thinking you don't need to learn anymore, pause for a moment. That's the first sign of a foolish mindset, and it's one you can change, starting today. Now, let's move to the second sign: refusing to take responsibility for your own life. I've met so many people over the years who live as if the world owes them something, as if their struggles are always someone else's fault. They blame their family, their boss, their circumstances, even the weather, for everything that goes wrong, never stopping to look at the role they play in their own story. Carl Jung had a powerful way of putting this. He said, "People will do anything no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's exactly what happens when you refuse to take responsibility. You run from yourself, from the truth that you have the power to change your life, no matter your age, no matter your circumstances. I remember working with a woman named Dorothy, a 72-year-old from Toronto. Dorothy had spent her life raising her kids, and she was proud of the family she'd built. But when her children grew up and moved away, she started to feel bitter. She'd complain endlessly about how they didn't call enough, how they didn't visit enough, how they didn't appreciate everything she'd done for them. I gave them everything, she'd say, and this is how they treat me. But when we sat down together, I asked her a simple question. What role might you be playing in this? At first, she was defensive. But as we talked, she started to see things different. She realized she'd never told her kids how much their calls meant to her, never shared her feelings openly because she was afraid of seeming needy. She'd been waiting for them to read her mind, and when they didn't, she blamed them for her loneliness. That was a hard truth for Dorothy to face, but it was also a freeing one. Once she took responsibility for her part in the situation, she started reaching out to her kids more, sharing her feelings honestly, even planning visits herself. And slowly, their relationship began to heal. That's the power of taking responsibility. It's not about blaming yourself or feeling guilty. It's about recognizing that you have the power to shape your own life, no matter what's happened in the past. A foolish mindset avoids that truth, always pointing the finger outward, always playing the victim. But when you refuse to take responsibility, you give away your power. You tell yourself that your happiness, your success, your relationships are all in someone else's hands. And that's a lonely, powerless place to be, especially as you grow older, when you deserve to feel strong, capable, and in control of your own story. So if you find yourself blaming others for the things that aren't going right in your life, take a step back. Ask yourself, what can I do different? How can I take ownership of my own happiness? That simple shift can change everything, opening the door to a life where you're the one steering the ship, not the waves around you. We've covered two important signs of a foolish mindset so far: thinking you know it all and refusing to take responsibility. But there's more to explore about how these patterns can hold you back, especially in ways you might not even notice. We've already uncovered two powerful signs of a foolish mindset: thinking you know it all and refusing to take responsibility. But there's more to this journey of self-discovery, more patterns that can quietly hold you back if you're not paying attention. Let's move to the third sign: an inability to control your emotions. I've seen this so often in my years of working with people, especially as we get older, when life's challenges can feel heavier, more overwhelming. A foolish mindset lets emotions take the wheel, reacting impulsively instead of responding with wisdom. It's the person who snaps at their spouse over a small disagreement, or who storms out of a family gathering because they felt slighted, or who lets a bad day at the doctor's office ruin their entire week. Carl Jung had a profound way of explaining this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What he meant is that when your emotions are in control, when you're reacting without thinking, you're not really living your life. You're being pulled along by your unconscious impulses, and then you wonder why things keep going wrong, why you keep feeling out of control. Let me share a story to make this real for you. A few years back, I worked with a man named Frank, a 65-year-old from Chicago. Frank was a kind-hearted guy, but he had a temper that could flare up at the smallest things. One day, he told me about an incident at a local coffee shop. He'd ordered his usual black coffee, but the barista got it wrong, handing him a latte instead. Frank exploded, shouting at the young woman behind the counter, calling her careless, and storming out without his coffee. Later that day, he felt terrible about it, but the damage was done. That wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Frank would lose his temper over traffic, over a delayed doctor's appointment, even over his grandkids being too loud when they visited. He thought his outbursts made him look strong, like he was standing up for himself, but in reality, they were a sign of weakness, a sign that his emotions were running the show. When we dug deeper, Frank admitted that he'd always been quick to anger, even as a young man. Growing up, his father had been the same way, yelling at the smallest inconvenience, and Frank had learned to mirror that behavior, thinking it was the only way to handle frustration. But over the years, that lack of emotional control had cost him dearly. His outbursts had strained his relationships with his kids, pushed away friends, and even affected his health, with high blood pressure that his doctor said was likely tied to stress. That's the thing about a foolish mindset. It doesn't just hurt the people around you, it hurts you most of all. When you can't control your emotions, you're at the mercy of every situation, every mood, every trigger. You react instead of respond, and those reactions often lead to regret, to broken connections, to a life that feels chaotic instead of peaceful. The Stoics, another group of wise thinkers, had a saying that aligns with Jung's teachings. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. A wise person knows that emotions come and go, like waves in the ocean, and they don't let those waves steer the ship. They pause, they breathe, they think before they act. For Frank, that meant learning to catch himself in the moment, to notice when his anger was rising, and to take a deep breath before saying anything. We started small, with a simple practice. Every time he felt his temper flare, he'd count to 5 in his head, giving himself just a moment to step back and choose how to respond. Over time, that small habit made a big difference. He stopped snapping at his grandkids, started listening to his wife instead of arguing, and even went back to that coffee shop to apologize to the barista. That's the power of mastering your emotions. It's not about suppressing how you feel. It's about choosing how you express it, so you can live with more peace, more connection, and more control, no matter your age. Now let's move to the 4th sign of a foolish mindset: surrounding yourself with the wrong people. You've probably heard the saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I can tell you, after decades of watching people grow and change, that saying is absolutely true. The people you choose to surround yourself with shape your thoughts, your habits, your entire outlook on life, especially as you get older, when your social circle can either lift you up or hold you back. A foolish mindset doesn't see this. It gravitates toward people who reinforce bad habits, people who complain, who blame others, who live without purpose, because those people feel safe, familiar, comfortable. But that comfort comes at a cost. It keeps you stuck, keeps you from growing, keeps you from becoming the wise, fulfilled person you're meant to be. Carl Jung believed that we unconsciously absorb the energy of those around us. And if you're spending your days with negative, directionless people, that energy will pull you down, whether you realize it or not. I've seen this play out in so many lives over the years. Let me tell you about a woman named Margaret, a 70-year-old from Vancouver. Margaret had a group of friends she'd known since her 40s, women she'd met through a local knitting club. They'd get together every week to chat, but over time, those gatherings turned into something else entirely. All they did was complain about their kids, their health, the government, the weather, you name it. Margaret would come home from those meetups feeling drained, heavy, even hopeless. But she kept going because she didn't want to lose those friendships. She thought that's just what friends do. They vent, they share their frustrations. But when we sat down together, I asked her to think about how those conversations were affecting her. Do they lift you up? I asked. Do they inspire you to be better, to try new things, to live with more joy? Margaret paused for a long time, then shook her head. No, she said quietly. They make me feel worse. That was a hard truth for her to face, but it was also a turning point. She realized that her foolish mindset had led her to surround herself with people who were keeping her stuck in negativity. People who were more comfortable complaining than growing. So she made a change. She started seeking out new connections, joining a walking group at her community center where she met people who shared her love for nature, who talked about their dreams, their passions, their gratitude for life. And slowly, Margaret started to change too. She felt lighter, more hopeful, more inspired to live each day with purpose. That's the power of your social circle. The people you spend your time with either help you rise or hold you back. And a foolish mindset doesn't see the difference. It clings to what's familiar, even when that familiarity is toxic. But as you move into your later years, you deserve better. You deserve friends who lift you up, who challenge you to grow, who remind you of the beauty and possibilities still ahead. So, take a moment to think about the people in your life. Are they encouraging you to be your best self, or are they pulling you into a cycle of negativity and stagnation? That question can be the first step toward building a circle that supports the wise, vibrant person you're meant to become. We've explored two more signs of a foolish mindset: an inability to control your emotions and surrounding yourself with the wrong people. But there are still a few more patterns to uncover, patterns that can keep you from the life you truly deserve. We've already explored four signs of a foolish mindset, from thinking you know it all to surrounding yourself with the wrong people. But there are still two more patterns to uncover, patterns that can keep you from living the wise, fulfilling life you deserve, especially as you move into your later years. Let's dive into the fifth sign: chasing pleasure instead of discipline. I've seen this so often in my decades of working with people, folks who've lived long lives but still fall into the trap of seeking short-term gratification over long-term growth. A foolish mindset prioritizes what feels good right now, whether it's binge watching TV for hours, indulging in unhealthy habits, or spending money on things that don't truly matter, all while ignoring the bigger picture, the dreams and goals that could bring real meaning to their lives. Carl Jung had a powerful way of framing this. He believed that the human mind is a battlefield between our higher self, the part of us that seeks purpose and growth, and our lower self, the part that craves instant pleasure. When you constantly chase pleasure, you're letting your lower self take over. And over time, that choice leads to a life of emptiness, of regret, of missed opportunities. Let me share a story to bring this to life. I once worked with a man named Edward, a 67-year-old from Florida. Edward had always been the life of the party in his younger years, the guy who loved a good time, whether it was late nights at the bar, weekend gambling trips, or indulging in rich foods without a second thought. But as he got older, those habits started to catch up with him. His health declined, his savings dwindled, and his relationships with his family grew strained because he was always focused on the next quick thrill, the next moment of pleasure. When we sat down together, Edward admitted that he felt unfulfilled, like he'd wasted so much time on things that didn't matter. I thought I was living the good life, he told me, but now I look back and realize I was just running from the hard stuff. That's the trap of a foolish mindset. It seeks pleasure to avoid discomfort, to avoid the discipline it takes to build a life of meaning. Edward had dreams like starting a small woodworking business or traveling with his wife, but he'd always put them off, choosing the easy path instead. That lack of discipline kept him from the things that could have brought him true joy, true purpose. The Bible puts it beautifully in Proverbs 21:20. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. In other words, a wise person invests in the future, while a foolish person consumes everything in the moment. And in today's world, it's easier than ever to fall into this trap. We're surrounded by distractions, endless streaming shows, social media scrolling, quick fixes for every feeling, whether it's a glass of wine to numb the stress or a shopping spree to feel a fleeting high. But those quick pleasures come at a cost. They leave you empty, unfulfilled, and farther from the life you truly want. For Edward, the change started with small steps. We focused on building discipline, one habit at a time. He started setting aside an hour each day to work on his woodworking, even when he didn't feel like it. He cut back on late-night TV, choosing instead to read books that inspired him, books about people who lived with purpose in their later years. And slowly, he started to see the difference. He felt more focused, more energized, more proud of himself than he had in years. That's the power of choosing discipline over pleasure. It's not about denying yourself joy. It's about choosing the kind of joy that lasts, the kind that comes from building something meaningful, from living in alignment with your higher self. So if you find yourself chasing quick pleasures, whether it's hours of mindless scrolling or habits that leave you feeling empty, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this bringing me closer to the life I want, or is it keeping me stuck? That question can be the first step toward a wiser, more fulfilling path. Now let's move to the sixth and final sign of a foolish mindset: never learning from your mistakes. This, to me, is one of the most dangerous patterns of all, because it keeps you trapped in a cycle of failure, a cycle you don't even realize you're in. A foolish person repeats the same mistakes over and over, never stopping to ask why they keep ending up in the same place, never taking the time to reflect, to grow, to change. Carl Jung called this the repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to repeat harmful behaviors because they feel familiar, even when they cause pain. I've seen this in so many lives over the years. People who date the same kind of toxic partner, who make the same financial mistakes, who fall into the same self-destructive habits, all because they refuse to learn from the past. Let me tell you about a woman named Clara, a 69-year-old from New York. Clara had a pattern of overspending, something she'd been doing since her 30s. Every time she felt stressed or lonely, she'd go on a shopping spree, buying clothes, gadgets, things she didn't need, just to feel a momentary lift. But that lift never lasted. She'd end up with credit card debt, stress over her finances, and a house full of things she didn't even use. When we started working together, Clara told me this had been going on for decades. I always tell myself I'll stop, she said, but I keep doing it. I don't know why. And about a foolish mindset: it doesn't learn, it doesn't reflect, it doesn't repeat, it just repeats. When we dug deeper, Clara realized that her overspending was tied to a deeper need, a need to feel worthy, to feel seen, something she'd struggled with since childhood. But instead of facing that need, instead of learning from her mistakes, she kept running to the same quick fix, hoping this time it would be different. Albert Einstein famously said, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results." And that's exactly what Clara was doing, what so many of us do when we refuse to learn from our past. The truth is, life is a teacher, but only if you're willing to be a student. Every mistake, every failure, every moment of pain is a lesson, a chance to grow, to do better, to become wiser. But a foolish mindset ignores those lessons, blaming the world, blaming luck, blaming anything but themselves. For Clara, the change started with reflection. I encouraged her to keep a journal, to write down every time she felt the urge to overspend, to note what she was feeling, what triggered her, and what she could do instead. Over time, she started to see the patterns, to understand why she kept making the same mistake. And with that understanding, she was able to change. She started saving instead of spending, started finding joy in small, meaningful things like taking walks in the park or calling a friend when she felt lonely. That's the power of learning from your mistakes. It's not about being perfect, it's about being willing to grow, to evolve, to become a wiser version of yourself, no matter your age. Now, let's bring this all together. We've walked through 6 powerful signs of a foolish mindset that can hold you back from the life you're meant to live. First, we talked about thinking you know it all, closing the door on growth and learning. Then we explored the danger of refusing to take responsibility, blaming others instead of owning your own story. We looked at how a lack of emotional control can lead to regret and chaos, and how surrounding yourself with the wrong people can keep you stuck in negativity. We uncovered the trap of chasing pleasure over discipline, choosing short-term gratification over long-term meaning. And finally, we saw the cost of never learning from your mistakes, repeating the same cycles instead of growing from them. I know these patterns can feel heavy, especially if you've recognized some of them in your own life. But here's the beautiful truth. You have the power to change right now, today, no matter how many years you've lived, no matter what's happened in the past. Carl Jung's wisdom isn't just about understanding the mind. It's about using that understanding to live better, to live wiser, to live with more purpose and peace. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to look at yourself with honesty, to learn, to grow, to choose the path of wisdom over the path of foolishness? I'd love to hear from you now. Which of these 6 signs resonated with you the most? Maybe you've noticed yourself chasing pleasure instead of discipline. Or maybe you've caught yourself repeating a mistake you swore you'd never make again. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts, your experiences, your hopes. I read every single one, and your words might just inspire someone else to take that first step toward change. If this video spoke to your heart, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to Ageless Philosophies for more insights to help you live your wisest, most fulfilling life at any age. Here's to letting go of a foolish mindset, embracing the wisdom within you, and stepping into the life you were always meant to live. You've got this, and I'm rooting for you every step of the way.